Commander has become one of the most popular formats, and building a deck in a format that has over 20,000 cards in it can be pretty difficult. But that's why I'm here to help. Here's how to build a Commander deck for beginners. I'll break this down into two parts. One is the basic rules, and then two is my guide on how much of each type of card you should have. So starting with the basics. A Commander deck has a total of 100 cards with no duplicates, except basic lands and cards that specifically state you can break the card limit rule, like Relentless Rats, for example. Each Commander deck must have a commander. Your commander sits in the command zone instead of your hand or deck. Your commander can be cast whenever you could normally, as though it was in your hand. And if your commander ever changes zones, like from the battlefield to the graveyard, you can put it back in the command zone. But each subsequent time you cast your commander from the command zone, it will cost 2 generic mana more each time. Your commander can be any creature with the legendary keyword. There are a few exceptions. There are some non-creatures that can be your commander, a few planeswalkers and a vehicle. I will leave a Scryfall link in the description below if you want to take a look at all of those. There are also a few ways to have 2 things in the command zone. If your commander has partner, you can have any other creature with partner in the command zone as well. If you do, you would have 98 cards in the deck. Your deck will always be 100 cards total. Partner with is similar, but it has to have a specific partner, and choose a background will allow you to have an enchantment with a background type in addition to your commander. Let's get back to deck building. Cards in your deck need to follow the color identity of your commander. Color identity is not the color the card is. For example, Memnarch is a colorless creature, but has blue pips in the activated ability. This means as your commander, Memnarch would allow you to have blue in the deck. Hybrid mana cards, although technically you could cast them in a deck that only has one of the colors, have the color identity of both. So cards like Manamorphose cannot be used in mono green or mono red commander decks. There are a few edge cases. Having the name of a type in the card, but not having the card be that type, doesn't give color identity. So cards like Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth can be played in any commander deck, since it is not a swamp, at least until it's on the battlefield. The last deck building exception is to the 100 card rule. You technically can have 101 cards if you use a companion, but many of the companions have restrictions you can't meet, and one of them's banned, so I would generally ignore those, especially when you're just starting out. Otherwise, check the ban list, but almost every other legendary creature should be good to go. I'll leave a link to the ban list in the description of this video so you can take a look at that as well. Otherwise, Commander is a 4-player free-for-all with 40 life instead of 20. And the first player does get to draw a card, and the first mulligan is free. Now that we've done the basics, I'll go over some specifics of what you might want to include in your deck. When I build a commander deck, I usually start with the lands. I run anywhere between 36 to 38 lands in a typical deck. Some decks might have more than 50 if lands are an important theme, but I think 37 is a safe starting number. Usually you want to lean on the side of more lands than less. It's almost always better to have excess mana than less, because at worst you can always cast your commander, whereas if you don't have enough mana to even do that, you might just be stuck. Next is ramp. Ramp is crucial in Commander, especially in more casual games. High mana cost finishers are usually what close out the game, and getting to yours a turn or two ahead of an opponent can mean the difference between winning and losing. When choosing your ramp, try to think about your curve. If you have a 3 mana commander, maybe think about playing 1 mana ramp like Mana Dorks. If you have a 4 mana commander, maybe think about playing 2 mana ramp, so on turn 3 you can play your commander. I usually have a minimum of 8 ramp spells in my deck, and not usually more than 10. Again, it's probably better to err on the side of more ramp than less. Next is the card draw. Card draw is incredibly important. Running out of cards in hand is often the beginning of the end. When you're up against 3 opponents, you're going to need a lot of cards to keep up with all of them. Now, card draw does not include cantrips. So cards like Opt that just draw one card don't count. They only replace themselves. By card draw, I mean cards that leave you with more cards than you started with. So something like Blue Sun Zenith, which you could put a lot of mana into to draw a lot of cards, would count as card draw. For card draw, I'd say a minimum of 10 is usually what you want. And just like with ramp and lands, you really can't have too much card draw. So having more is always going to be better than less. Next is spot removal. Spot removal is a card like Beast Within. You trade one card to get rid of one other card. Spot removal is inefficient in Commander because you're spending one card to get rid of one, but you have two other opponents who didn't lose anything. Because of that, you don't want to lean too heavily on spot removal. If your deck is all spot removal, you'll mostly just run out of cards. But it's useful to have nonetheless. And I am also including counter magic in the spot removal category, because it's essentially the same thing, trading one card for one card. It just has to be on the stack. Generally, as rules, you want lower mana cost, so look to cards like Assassin's Trophy, which is 2 mana, or Swords to Plowshares, which is 1 mana. You also want flexible cards. Beast Within is a good example because it destroys anything, so is Assassin's Trophy, and I would probably include some way to get rid of indestructible permanents. There are times where people will make creatures indestructible or artifacts indestructible, and it can be really difficult to deal with. So try to have at least one answer to that somewhere in your deck that you could hopefully draw into. For spot removal, there's no hard and fast rule in terms of how many you want to run. It's a little bit meta dependent, but I like to lean towards 8. You could go a little less, you could also go more. The next section is board wipes. Board wipes are cards that remove all of something. These are often a lot better than spot removal because destroying everything hurts all of your opponents, whereas spot removal will only affect one. Most board wipes destroy all creatures. There are some that affect artifacts, enchantments, or all non-land permanents. Which one of those you want to add will depend on your spot removal package and what you're playing. If you're in an artifact-focused deck, maybe don't play Bane of Progress. If you're in a deck that doesn't use many creatures, you can play a lot more destroy all creature effects. It depends on what you're playing. I usually run 3 or 4 destroy all creature effects in each deck, and maybe 1 or 2 destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantment effects. You could run more. I've run 10 plus in certain decks. Again, it's very dependent to your deck. I would say try and tailor the board wipes to what your deck wants to do. I also want to mention that you should include at least one way to exile a graveyard. This can be like Tormod's Crypt, or my personal favorite, Soul Guide Lantern. There are a lot of commander decks that often utilize the graveyard very, very heavily, and trust me, these cards will win games against certain decks. You should always throw in at least one. The categories I've listed here are not every possible category of card you could come up with, and of course, some cards could be in 2 categories at once if it draws multiple cards and also destroys creatures. So all of these numbers are a little flexible. Then after that, once you fit all of your land, ramp, removal, card draw in, the rest of the deck is for whatever your theme is. Now, don't forget that your theme can extend to these other categories. If you're an artifact deck, maybe you'll play Executioner's Capsule in the spot removal slot because it's an artifact, so it works with your theme. In terms of your theme, and what you're building around, if you're a zombie deck or if you're an enchantment deck, whatever, there's not any specific advice I can give you. Commander is a casual format, usually, and you should play the cards that you like and that you find fun. One thing that I would say to look out for is payoffs and enablers. Let's imagine we're building a landfall deck. If I played Omnath in the command zone, that's a payoff for lands entering the battlefield. So maybe I would play more enablers in the 99, like Mina and Den, which gives me extra land drops and can also bounce lands so I can replay them and get my landfall triggers. Or the other way around. If Mina and Den was my commander, maybe I would play more payoffs in the 99 because I have the enabler in my command zone. Otherwise, just get like weird and creative with your themes and decks. Casual Commander is a great place to really show off funky themes, weird ideas, strange cards you want to play. Don't be afraid to play a card that nobody else seems to play or that isn't very popular in EDH Rec. Just have fun with it. And that's it. If this helped you make a Commander deck, you can help me by liking, commenting, subscribing, or sharing with your friends. If you'd like to see any other guides from me, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for watching.